Let's start with our first news. Only does Jiri Prochazka have to recover from his devastating loss at UFC 327, he continues to take serious heat for claiming he showed mercy to Carlos Ulberg after the fight. This time, the response comes directly from Ulberg himself. As covered over the weekend, immediately after Jiri was knocked out by Ulberg, he told Joe Rogan that he knew Ulberg's knee was injured and that he chose to show mercy in that moment. But those comments quickly sparked controversy, with many fans and analysts skeptical, especially after replays showed Jiri still attacking the legs and pressing forward before the knockout on the Ariel Helwani show. Ulberg finally addressed the comments and he went off. He has said since that he showed you mercy and he regrets that. That is absolute bullshit. That is fear. That was fear that he had. That wasn't mercy at all. He knows he is a fighter. And that is the difference between a champion and someone just playing for the crowd. There was no mercy in there, only hesitation, fear, and that is what got him clipped. Ulberg went further, calling Jiri a pretender, saying he knew exactly what was happening in the moment. He said when my leg was compromised, he thought, this is my opportunity. He added that Jiri is just playing for the crowd, and people are believing sound bites without seeing the reality of the fight. According to Ulberg, Jiri did not show sportsmanship or restraint. Instead, he froze under pressure, and that split-second hesitation cost him the fight in the most brutal way possible. He also emphasized that at this level of competition, there is no room for hesitation, and every fighter steps into the cage knowing that a single moment can change everything. Ulberg made it clear that in his view, Jiri's post-fight explanation was an attempt to rewrite what actually happened inside the octagon. He believes the footage speaks for itself, showing pressure, exchanges, and the decisive timing of the knockout. For Ulberg, this was not about excuses, but about correcting the narrative and making it clear that elite fighters cannot afford mental lapses when the fight is still live. He stands by that assessment firmly, leaving no doubt about where he believes the truth lies in this controversy, and he is not backing down at all. Move on to another news. Charles Oliveira has opened up about the meaning of the BMF belt, claiming that the title carries more respect now than it did in its early days, even as fans continue debating what the championship is really supposed to represent. Ever since Charles Oliveira captured the BBMF title, many critics have argued that the way he won it did not match the original idea of the belt. The issue, according to fans, was that Oliveira leaned heavily on his grappling, wrestling, and top control to dominate Holloway for 5 full rounds. Instead of engaging in the expected stand-up war that many associate with the BMF identity. This sparked a wider debate about whether the spirit of the belt has changed over time, and Oliveira himself has now addressed that evolution directly. He explained that the BMF concept originally came from Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal, describing it as a fight between two men who did not care about respect and were willing to say and do anything to promote the clash. He pointed out that in that era, the rivalry was fueled by hostility, trash talk, and pure chaos outside the cage. Oliveira then said that things started to shift when Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje fought. According to him, it was no longer about two fighters selling hatred or disrespect, but instead, two highly respectful athletes who simply agreed to go to war with their hands inside the octagon. He continued by referencing Gaethje versus Max Holloway, saying that the pattern had already changed again. Even without heavy trash talk, the fight still delivered violence, pressure, and non-stop action, which in his view kept the essence of the BMF alive in a different form. Oliveira's message was that the meaning of the BMF belt has evolved naturally over time, moving away from pure rivalry and disrespect, and toward recognizing fighters who are willing to push an extreme pace and bring constant violence regardless of personality or promotion. However, these comments are unlikely to sit well with all fans, especially those who felt disappointed by recent BMF expectations. Many supporters still believe that when the belt is on the line, it should guarantee a wild, stand-up war from start to finish, with no exceptions or stylistic debates. Despite the criticism, Oliveira's perspective highlights how the division's most unique title continues to evolve with each new generation of fighters, shaping different interpretations of what it truly means to be the BMF. Move on to another news. Jiri Prochazka has finally responded to the criticism surrounding his post-fight mercy comments following his loss at UFC 327, as he returned home to the Czech Republic and faced a wave of local media attention. Speaking openly and with brutal honesty, Jiri admitted he was deeply disappointed with his own performance, promising that he intends to come back stronger and eventually bring the belt back to his home country. He said, "I didn't give the performance that I wanted. I literally fucked it up. And mainly, at the moment, when I saw a weak opponent or an injured opponent, I won't make excuses about some pity or compassion for him. I know that at that moment, I no longer worked at 100%, and that cost me the victory." Jiri went on to explain that the fight was decided in those crucial moments where his focus dropped, and he accepted full responsibility for not capitalizing when the opportunity was there. He emphasized that he is not going to hide behind excuses or emotional reasoning, and instead wants to fully confront what happened. He added that he wants to eat this up and sit with the pain of the loss, using it as fuel to improve. According to him, only by facing these emotions head-on can he move forward and make the necessary adjustments to compete at the highest level again. Jiri also revealed that he has already spoken with UFC management, and there are multiple possible directions for his next move, including high-profile fights or even another immediate title opportunity. However, he made it clear that nothing has been confirmed yet, and he is still evaluating what comes next. Despite the setback, Jiri expressed strong belief in his future, stating that this experience will transform him and make him stronger than ever before. He insisted that he will not be the same fighter moving forward, and that the lessons from this defeat will shape a more dangerous version of himself. He ended by reaffirming his ultimate goal, promising that he will bring the title back to the Czech Republic, showing confidence that this loss is not the end of his championship journey. Meanwhile, Henry Cejudo has publicly questioned Jiri's explanation, saying he is not convinced by the mercy narrative. Speaking on the Pound for Pound podcast alongside Kamaru, he suggested that the situation may have been misread and continues to spark debate across the MMA community. Move on to another news. Dana White has responded to the massive backlash surrounding the upcoming event announcement, addressing concerns and pushing back strongly against the criticism that has been circulating online. He made it clear that everything being discussed will not involve any taxpayer funding, stating that not $1 of taxpayer money will go into the project, and emphasizing that this is entirely being handled as a private initiative. He described the event as the UFC's gift to the 250th birthday of America, framing it as a celebration rather than something controversial or politically driven. According to him, the entire purpose is to honor the country's history and national identity through a major sporting showcase. Dana White also directly addressed a major misconception around the announcement. He said he wants to crush the idea that the event is tied to any political agenda, stressing that it is not about left or right, far right or far left, or any political alignment at all. He explained that people today tend to view everything through a political lens, but insisted the situation is different. In his words, this is about the United States itself, what the country represents, how it was built, and the shared identity of its people. He added that regardless of where someone stands politically, the goal is for fans to connect with the meaning of the event. He said that if you love America, you are going to love what is being planned, reinforcing the idea that the focus is national pride rather than political division. Dana White also confirmed a major detail that is added to the attention, stating that the event will take place on the White House lawn. He further noted that the President of the United States will be present, highlighting the scale and symbolic importance of the occasion. He closed his remarks by reiterating that the event is meant to bring people together through sport and celebration, not division, and insisted that the intent behind it has been misunderstood by many of its critics. Move on to another news. Carlos Ulberg and Magomed Ankalaev have become one of the most talked about potential matchups in the division, with both fighters repeatedly linked as future opponents and the tension continuing to build online. Magomed Ankalaev recently told Ariel Helwani that he wants to test himself against the former champion, making it clear that he is interested in the fight and sees it as a meaningful challenge for his career. That statement appears to be what led Ankalaev to post directly on social media platform X, where he called out multiple names in the division and stirred up even more debate among fans and fighters. He wrote that Carlos is his man, while also mentioning that he wants a scrap with Jiri Prochazka, adding a bold challenge by saying, "Let's fight next. I dare you to call me out." Ankalaev did not stop there, as he escalated the conversation further by posting a fan survey asking the public who they want to see him fight next between Carlos Ulberg, Jiří Procházka, or Paulo Costa. Early results from the poll showed Carlos Ulberg in the lead, suggesting that fans are heavily invested in that matchup and see it as the most compelling option among the three. During the Pound for Pound podcast with Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo, the potential matchup was also discussed in detail, with both analysts weighing in on what could come next for Ankalaev and the division as a whole. Cejudo, in particular, threw in an interesting angle, suggesting that Ankalaev versus Ulberg is the fight that makes the most sense right now, and implying that it is likely the next major move for both competitors. He emphasized that this is the matchup fans have not yet seen, and questioned who else would realistically step into that position, given the current state of the division and ongoing title picture shifts. The conversation then expanded into broader possibilities, including scenarios involving Khamzat Chimaev and Sean Strickland, depending on how future fights play out and how momentum shifts at the top of the rankings. Cejudo added that if Khamzat Chimaev continues his run successfully, it could open pathways for even bigger crossover-style matchups, including fights involving Paulo Costa, creating multiple potential directions for the division. Ultimately, the discussion highlighted how fluid the landscape has become, with Ankalaev, Ulberg, and other top contenders all positioned in a way that it could lead to several high-stakes matchups in the near future. Move on to another news. Carlos Ulberg has provided a concerning update on his injury situation, following recent speculation about how long he may be sidelined and when he could return to defend the light heavyweight title. During an appearance on the Ariel Helwani show, Ulberg confirmed that he will not get his knee properly checked until he arrives in Vegas, raising questions about the severity of the issue and how long recovery might take. He also revealed a worrying detail about the condition itself, stating that he felt his knee going in and out of the socket during the fight, a sensation that immediately raised alarm about potential structural damage. According to Ulberg, this is not something minor, and the situation will only become clearer once he undergoes full medical evaluation. The uncertainty now surrounds both his recovery timeline and his return to competition. Despite the injury concerns, Ulberg also addressed the growing call for a rematch with Jiří Procházka, firmly shutting down the idea after Jiří publicly pushed for another chance at the title. Ulberg was direct in his response, making it clear that he does not believe a rematch is warranted at this stage. He pointed out that Jiří has already had multiple opportunities and, in his view, those chances have been used up. He said, "He's had his chances. He's had a fair few goes. I'm not normally this hard on guys, but if you're out there talking smack, you can't make excuses." Ulberg also expressed frustration over Jiří's post-fight behavior, claiming that he did not even come over to congratulate him after the bout, something he expected as a standard gesture of respect between fighters. He added that while he usually shows respect to every opponent he faces, this situation felt different to him, suggesting that Jiří's actions were more about performing for the crowd rather than acknowledging the outcome honestly. Meanwhile, Jiří Procházka continues to remain one of the most talked about contenders in the division, despite his recent setbacks. He has stayed active in high-level competition and remains in title conversations due to previous big wins and his fan-favorite fighting style. However, the record also shows a difficult stretch for him, as he has now lost 3 straight title opportunities, adding more pressure on his next steps and raising questions about whether another immediate title shot is realistic at this stage of his career. Move on to another news. Dana White has officially announced that UFC 330 is set to take place in Philadelphia this August, marking a major return for the promotion to one of the most historic fight cities in America. The announcement was made alongside local officials who expressed strong excitement about bringing a numbered UFC event back to Pennsylvania, highlighting the significance of the deal and the energy it brings to the region. They praised Dana White and his team for making the event happen, stating that the entire state is pumped up about hosting such a major combat sports spectacle, especially at a time when Pennsylvania is already seeing a wave of major sporting events. Dana White also shared his thoughts on the decision, making it clear that Philadelphia was a natural fit for a big UFC card due to its deep connection with combat sports history. He said, "We love Philly. When you think about Philly, you think about fighting. Some of the greatest fighters ever, and some of the great fights in the early days of boxing, came out of Philly. He continued by pointing out how Pennsylvania has been rapidly growing as a major sports destination, mentioning several high-profile events that have recently taken place or are scheduled in the state. These include the NFL Draft in Pittsburgh, the upcoming World Cup matches in Philadelphia, and the PGA Championship also being hosted in the state, showing a broader trend of Pennsylvania becoming a central hub for major global events. Dana White emphasized that adding a numbered UFC event to that list further strengthens the state's reputation as a premier sporting location, especially for combat sports fans. However, during the announcement, a light moment also broke out when he joked that the local officials had essentially stolen all his stories, after they listed many of the same talking points he was preparing to mention. Despite the playful exchange, the message remained clear. UFC 330 in Philadelphia is expected to be a major event, bringing elite fighters, massive attention, and another historic chapter to one of America's most iconic fight cities.